Okay, so here is the update 35 combat preview that was just posted by Zos Gilliam the Rogue. This is a lot of word salad here, and so the two things that are most important for people to know is weaving. They're nerfing weaving. Now, we can read through this entirely, but the too long didn't read here is at the very end. So what they're doing is making light attack weaving a static amount rather than being influenced on your stats. So for reference, in many ESO high-end experience and activities, the average build roughly sees 15 to 20% of their overall damage come from light attacks alone, which is a huge contribution to the delta, not Deltia, of power we see. While testing these adjustments internally, we've seen a 6 to 11% overall damage reduction, which allows for a much smaller and healthier gap. The initial part of this all talks about the premise as to why they're doing this. So what they're doing, reducing the light attack and heavy attack impact in damage production by adjusting their damage to deal a flat amount, regardless of the stats. So we've spent a considerable amount of time investigating the baseline experience that a new player would have with these attacks. I think light attack weaving has separated good, average to very beginners, and you're still gonna have light attack weaving. If you don't know about light attack weaving, I'll show you here in game, but this is a very simple way to explain it. Essentially, there's two global cooldowns in ESO. One is for abilities, right? So if I cast this ability, it takes 1 second until the animation is done and I can cast another ability. Light attack weaving is also on a 1 second global cooldown. Thus, you compare them like a heartbeat very, very close together. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And you do these herky-jerky animations, and it's essentially a way to get free DPS. The top-end players shrink that time difference to almost nothing to allow them to get top 3 damage sources. Sometimes their number 1 damage source is literally light attack weaving. It's not their main spammable. It's not damage over time effects. So this is what produces these super high-end damage users that separate from the beginner or intermediate player. And Zos continues to do, for better or worse, to try to shrink the power vacuum. This game, Elder Scrolls Online, in my opinion, has a huge range of outcomes. Because unlike World of Warcraft that has a 1.5 second global cooldown, you don't have to block, you don't have to dodge, you don't have to do all these other things, and you have these very long cooldowns. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, sometimes 5, 30 seconds. So in those type traditional MMOs, what you're managing is your cooldowns, your timers. You're running these internal timers. Oh, this ability's up, I'm gonna cast it. ESO is really a resource-intensive game and managing that, and then priority system based on your damage over time. Meanwhile, your light attack weaving in between. You have to sync up these like a heartbeat. For me, I play Elder Scrolls Online primarily for the community. I love teaching the game, but I love self-mastery of the combat. So what do I think about this change? Well, it nerfs the damage by about 10%. That's not gonna be completely changing the game, but I like the game to have an avenue of mastery. That you should have some separation from the beginner player that doesn't do much DPS to someone that sits on a parse dummy for 1,000 hours like Skinny Cheeks. Skinny Cheeks has spent the time to be very, very good at light attack weaving. He earned that. I'm not that level. Why? Because I haven't spent that much time doing it. So our gap should be pretty large because he spent the time and energy to learn those things and get the nuances down to the combat. Me? I should be little baby Deltia 90, 100,000 DPS guy because I haven't. So is this going to completely radically change the game and everyone's going to do a ton of damage or it's going to lower damage overall significantly? No. But ESO continues the trend of trying to make it for the average player, the more casual, the more beginner-friendly game. Why? They probably want to attract a lot more people to come to this game versus the old heads like me that just stick around for 10, 20 years. So I don't like this change, but I'm not going to overreact and think it's going to be the end of the game and so forth. You're still going to have light attack weaving, just not going to be as beneficial. And moving on. So that's change number 1. It also talks about heavy attack build lovers. So hopefully DK heavy attack nerf gets done there. And the second one here is combat effects. So again, we got a huge PhD word salad. I love you, Gil, but my God, you could write Moby Dick if you wanted to with this much words. What it basically says is the top end players load up their bar with either 0 main spammables or 1 main spammable. Then everything else usually outperforms their main spammable. So if we look at my Templar, for instance, this is the best way to reference this. Let's take my Templar in here, okay? So I have a main spammable biting jabs. Why would I use a damage over time effect? I would use a damage over time effect that would do more damage per global cooldown than this ability produces. So if I do a puncturing, do a biting jabs here, and let's say it does 25,000 damage. Well, if Purifying Light does 30 to 35,000 damage, when that's off cooldown, when the effect is done, it would make more sense to cast another Purifying Light than do biting jabs. Thus, you have the PvE DPS meta. Load up your bars with essentially damage over time skills or skills that add value to your overall damage. And the only time you really use your main spammable is when all those are off cooldown, which is maybe 1 or 2. Take the Stam Necro, the Macro. You don't even have a main spammable. It's just dots. They fall off and you go back and forth, right? So that's kind of what the PvE DPS meta is. A lot of these dots that they get to in the post are roughly 10 seconds. Solar Barrage, right around 10 seconds. You got Blazing Spear on the Templar. You have Destruction Staff. I'm on a Stamp, so I don't even have it level, but you got Wall of Elements, Caltrops. You know, Carve is a little bit different one. You got Stampede here right around 15 seconds, but in general, around 10, 12, 15 seconds. So you're going through 1, 2, 3, going to your back bar, 1, 2, 3, and then doing your main spammable. It requires a ton of bar swaps, a ton of actions per minute. Well, you guessed it. What they're doing is trying to eliminate this and trying to make it easier for the average player to maintain these. So again, word salad, link in description if you want to see what this looks like. But for example, previously a damage over time effect would deal 1.5 times the damage of a spammable over its duration of 10 seconds. Now, damage over time effects will deal 2x the damage of a spammable over the duration of 20 seconds. So in general, they're going to increase the time management of these dots, making it easier for people that don't do the bar swaps effectively. They're not sitting looking at their action bars all the time, and it's going to do a lot more damage. So your dots are going to be very, very easy to maintain. So what do I think about this? Again, it goes back to self-mastery and the combat of the game. I think ZeniMax Online has done a good job making it a little bit more casual. So you can use Oaken Soul, you can load up your bars like my Stamplar with Fighter's Guild abilities and throttle down on biting jabs and not really have a whole lot of complex dots and so forth. There's ways to amplify the damage of your main spammable so much that you don't have to focus on that stuff. That's, I think, a better route than making it very, very easy to maintain these dots. So again, they're trying to make it more casual. They're trying to make it more friendly for a beginner. They're trying to make it much easier to manage. I would rather see a way to pump up your main spammable so you wouldn't have to sit there and do a bunch of dots versus making the dots last a lot longer and making them deal a lot more damage. We're gonna get this on the public test server, so this is not final. This is the major combat changes. I think this will change the game forever, but also I don't wanna overreact until I see it on the PTS. So Monday, July 11th, this launches on the PTS. We'll see you there. Watch me on twitch.tv/Deltiasgaming. I'm amazing. Just ask my mom. Thanks for watching.